You were born into the most controlled country on earth, and for the first 17 years of your life, you thought you were lucky. That's the part nobody tells you. Not the hunger, not the prison camps, the fact that you didn't know you were suffering. That's what makes it terrifying. Stay with me. Because what happens inside that country doesn't stay there. It follows you. Even after you leave, especially after you leave. The morning starts before the sun does. You open your eyes at 5:45 because the loudspeaker on the corner of your street crackles to life at exactly 5:46 every day without exception. It plays patriotic music, the same songs, the same order. You know the melody so well you could hum it in your sleep. You probably do. Your house is small. The walls are thin enough that you can hear your neighbor cough through the plaster. The floor is concrete under a layer of linoleum that peels at the corners. In winter, the heat comes from a coal stove in the center of the main room, and your family of 5 rotates around it like planets around a dim star. Breakfast is corn porridge. Some mornings there's a small piece of pickled cabbage on the side. On good mornings, there's a boiled egg. You remember the boiled egg mornings more than any holiday. Your mother wraps your scarf twice before you leave. She does it without looking at you, fingers working the wool automatically, the way people do things they've done 10,000 times. The scarf smells like her, like smoke and something floral underneath that you can never quite name. You walk to school on streets where every wall carries a portrait. The great leader looks down from above the pharmacy, above the post office, above the school entrance. You have been taught since before you could read that his eyes follow you. You believe this, not as a metaphor, as literal fact. This is your normal. And normal is the most dangerous word in any language. You are 15 the first time something doesn't quite fit. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon in your school's political education class. Your teacher is explaining, as she has explained before, that the outside world lives in darkness and poverty while the Korean people thrive under the guidance of the party. She says this with complete certainty. Her hands don't shake. Her voice doesn't waver. But the boy sitting 2 seats to your left has shoes with a hole in the sole. And your classroom has 17 broken desks that have been broken for 3 years. And last winter, your neighbor's youngest daughter got sick and stayed sick because the hospital had no medicine for what she had. You don't say any of this out loud. You don't even fully think it. It surfaces for maybe 4 seconds inside your chest, this small, uncomfortable friction. And then you push it down, because pushing it down is what you have been trained to do since you were old enough to understand what a watcher's committee is. Your country has an entire system built around the moment you just had. It's called Inminban, Neighborhood Surveillance Units. Your neighbors watch you. You watch them. Everyone reports, not out of malice necessarily, out of survival, out of the understanding that failing to report is its own crime. You walk home that afternoon and the portraits are still on the walls. You don't look at them differently yet, but somewhere in your body, in a place that doesn't have a name, something has shifted by exactly 1 millimeter. That millimeter is going to cost you everything. You are 22 when you find the radio. Your uncle keeps it wrapped in cloth inside a hollowed-out piece of wood under his floorboards. He shows it to you on a night when the power is out and the neighborhood is dark, and the loudspeaker is silent for once. He unwraps it with the careful hands of someone handling something sacred, or something explosive, which in your country are the same thing. It's a small transistor radio, Chinese-made, illegal. He finds the frequency slowly, moving the dial in increments so small it seems like he's afraid the sound itself might betray you. And then, through the static, you hear a voice speaking Korean. But it sounds different. The cadence is different. The words are the same words you know, but arranged in a way that makes your brain tilt sideways, like a picture hung crooked. The voice is talking about your country, from the outside, describing things you have seen with your own eyes, but naming them in ways you were never allowed to name them. You listen for 40 minutes. When your uncle turns it off, neither of you speaks for a long time. He wraps the radio back in its cloth. He puts it back under the floor. And then he looks at you with the specific expression of someone who has just given you a gift they know will ruin you. And he says quietly, "Don't tell your mother. You don't. You never do. But now you know there is an outside." The first time you see a physical map with borders, you cry. You don't expect to. The emotion comes before the thought. It ambushes you. You had always understood intellectually that other countries existed, but seeing the lines, the actual cartographic lines that say here ends one world and here begins another, something inside you breaks open in a way that can't be closed again. You begin talking to people, carefully, with the kind of caution that is less a choice and more a reflex built over 22 years. You learn that there are others who know, who have heard, who have seen things that don't match the picture they were given. You learn who can be trusted not by anything they say, but by a kind of stillness in their eyes. A pause before they answer certain questions, the way they change the subject at the exact right moment. A network exists. It moves people. It runs along the Tumen River, which separates your country from China in the north, 300 kilometers long, in some places narrow enough to throw a stone across. Crossing it is not a decision. It is a collapse. The decision-making part of your brain shuts down, and what's left is animal. Pure directional movement towards something, and away from something else. The water is cold in a way that goes past cold into something else, into cellular alarm. Your legs stop working correctly, but keep working anyway. On the other bank, you collapse in the mud, and your heart is doing something in your chest that feels architectural, structural, like a building shaking at its foundation. You are across. Congratulations. Your life is about to become a different kind of impossible. China does not want you. This is the first thing you learn on the other side. Not with words, with reality. You are not a refugee according to Chinese law. You are an illegal economic migrant. If you are caught, you will be sent back. If you are sent back, you will go to a labor camp. You understand this within your first 48 hours in the country you thought was freedom. You move in darkness. You sleep in places you cannot describe without your hands shaking later. Brokers exist. They move people for money. Some of them are good, or something close to good, meaning they deliver what they promise without also selling you to someone worse. Others are not. Women who cross alone are particularly vulnerable. You already know this before you cross because women who crossed before you came back and told you. Not in words, in the way they moved, in the way they stood in rooms. You learn to be invisible. You learn to understand Mandarin faster than you thought possible, because understanding what people are saying around you is the difference between staying free and going back. And back means the camp. The camp means something you are not ready to say out loud yet. Here is what the world doesn't put in the headlines. North Korea runs somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 people through its political prison camp system at any given moment. These are not criminals by any standard you were raised to recognize. They are people who tuned into a foreign radio station. People whose grandfather said something wrong in 1967. People who were caught watching a South Korean drama on a USB drive no bigger than your thumb. The camp system operates on a principle called guilt by association. 3 generations of punishment. Your crime becomes your children's crime, becomes your grandchildren's crime. The family unit, the thing your culture holds most sacred, becomes the instrument of your collective destruction. You find this out not from a book. You find it out because you meet a man in a basement in a city near the border whose father died in Camp 14, and whose mother died 2 years later from what he describes with clinical precision as not eating anymore. He is telling you this like he is reading from a weather report because he has told it so many times that the telling has been stripped of all the feeling that used to live inside it. A 2014 United Nations Commission of Inquiry spent a year documenting testimonies from defectors. It concluded that what happens inside North Korea's prison camps constitutes crimes against humanity. The specific phrase they used was extermination, murder, enslavement, torture, imprisonment, rape, forced abortions, and other sexual violence. You knew some of this. You suspected more. Hearing it confirmed by a formal UN document does something strange to you. It makes it both more real and somehow less real at the same time. Like the numbers are too big to live inside a human body. And then there's this. The number of North Koreans who have successfully defected all the way to South Korea since 1998 is around 34,000 in a country of 26 million people. That is 0.1%. The other 99.9% are still there, still waking up to the loudspeaker, still rotating around the coal stove. You make it to South Korea through a network that runs through China into Southeast Asia, through a third country, through an application process, through a reception center called Hanawan, where they teach you how to live in a place with 24-hour electricity and grocery stores and internet access and a thing called personal debt. You stand in a supermarket in Seoul for the first time and you cannot move. Not because it's beautiful, though it is, in the way that abundance is always beautiful to someone who has known scarcity. You cannot move because there are 47 different types of instant noodles on the shelf in front of you, and you don't know how to want one of them instead of another. Choice is a muscle. You find out you don't have it. You have been making survival decisions your whole life. decisions with one right answer and death on the wrong side. You have never once made a decision that was purely about preference. About what you like? About who you are when nothing is at stake. The fluorescent light hums above you. The floor is very clean. Someone behind you says, "Excuse me," and you flinch like they raised a hand. This is your new country. You are free. This word now means something completely different than it did before you got it. Here is the part nobody warns you about. Not the hunger, not the camps. The after. Defectors who reach South Korea report depression rates that run between 30 and 40% within the first 2 years. Post-traumatic stress disorder at rates that would not be out of place in veterans of active combat. Not metaphorically, clinically. You speak the same language as the people around you. This was supposed to help. It does the opposite, because it means the gap is invisible. People around you cannot see why you don't understand the cultural references, the slang, the way jokes work, the unspoken codes of a consumer society that has been running for 60 years while yours was frozen. You are not foreign enough to receive the grace that foreigners receive. You are not local enough to move without friction. You exist in a gap between two worlds that has no name in either language. The South Korean Defector Support Organization, Hanawon, gives you settlement money, around 8 million won when you arrive. Enough to start. Not enough to start without also knowing what starting looks like. Some defectors spend it in weeks. Not because they are reckless, because they have never had money and nobody taught them what money does over time. A 2019 study found that North Korean defectors in South Korea earn roughly 63% of the average South Korean income. They are more likely to be unemployed, more likely to be in debt, more likely to live alone. You are not a statistic, but you are inside one. There is a night about 8 months in when you are sitting in your apartment in Seoul. It is small, but you have it alone. The heating works. There is food in the refrigerator. The lights come on when you touch the wall and stay on for as long as you want them. And you feel, in this quiet and safe and warm room, the most profound loneliness you have ever experienced. Not because you miss home. You know now what home actually was. You are not confused about that. You feel loneliness because you understand, sitting in that room with the lights on and food in the refrigerator, that the version of yourself who existed inside that country is gone. She didn't survive the river. Something crossed. Something made it to Seoul and learned 47 types of instant noodles existed. But she, the one who wrapped the scarf, who knew the egg mornings, who felt that 1 millimeter shift in a classroom and swallowed it back down, she is not here. You cannot tell this to the South Korean colleagues you are trying to build relationships with, because the sentence is too long and the context is too deep and you would need to explain 20 years of history before the feeling makes sense. You cannot tell it to your family still in the North, because you cannot contact them without endangering them. You sit in the room with the lights on. The lights stay on. There is a woman named Yeonmi Park. You have probably heard her name. She crossed the Tumen River at 13 years old with her mother. She sold her story to the world, which is the only currency a defector reliably has. She was called a liar by North Korean state media. She was called inconsistent by critics who noticed discrepancies in different versions of her account told over different years. What her critics do not explain, and what you now understand from your own body, is what repeated trauma does to the sequencing of memory. The timeline fractures. The order of events rearranges itself. The brain edits what it cannot hold. This is not dishonesty. This is how the nervous system survives things that the nervous system was not built to survive. You understand her in a way that does not require defending her. You understand her because you know what it costs to tell the story at all. The truth about North Korea is not the missiles. It is not the nuclear program or the military parades or the satellite imagery of the camp locations. Those things are real. They matter. But they are the outside of the thing, the visible surface. The truth is what it does to a person to spend their entire formation inside a system that owns their perception. To grow up in a reality that was constructed to prevent you from seeing it as constructed. To have your first act of rebellion be not a protest, not a march, not a speech, but simply allowing yourself to notice that a desk is broken. The system doesn't need violence in every moment. It runs mostly on the violence you do to your own thinking. The thoughts you stop before they finish. The questions you never ask. The feeling you push back down before it surfaces enough to have a name. You did this every day for 22 years, and you were good at it. You were excellent at it, because you had no choice, and because being excellent at it kept you alive. The skill that saved you is the same skill that takes years of therapy to unlearn. There is no clean exit from that. There is no medication for it. There is only time and the slow, painstaking work of learning to trust your own perception again. You are sitting in Seoul with the lights on. Outside your window, the city is alive in the way that cities that have never been interrupted are alive. There are advertisements on every surface. People are arguing on their phones. Someone is eating something that smells like garlic and oil, and someone else is laughing too loud in the street below. You think about the portraits, about the loudspeaker, about the cloth-wrapped radio under the floor, about the map with the borders, about the water that went past cold. You made it. You crossed. You are free, if free means the lights stay on. But the person who taught you to push your thoughts back down before they surfaced didn't make it with you. She's still there, still in the classroom, still feeling that 1 millimeter shift in her chest and burying it before it becomes something the watchers can see. And there's no way to go back for her. They tell you freedom is the absence of walls. What they don't tell you is that the walls you built inside yourself to survive the walls outside, you don't come down just because you crossed a river.